Motegi's windy layout offered up plenty of drama last week. However, the result of that race leaves us with two championships that feel more like foregone conclusions. But with Monza, you just don't know what's going to happen. Unusual winds tend to strike here, and it's easy to get caught up in someone else's mess. Let's see who takes home the crown as we get ready to watch round 10 of the PRL LeMans series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is DJ Clark. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Nicknamed the Temple of Speed, this Italian circuit has become one of the most famous the world over. Let's head to our track guide to learn more about it. Welcome to Monza. This track has a major place in racing history, not just for the legendary races, names, and cars that have been here, but because it was the third purpose-built car racing circuit in the world. It's often discussed and reverenced among fans, and especially by Italians who have nicknamed it the Temple of Speed. In fact, the Ferrari fans here are so famous for their devotion that they have been dubbed the Tifosi and never fail to show up in droves. While the real world offers only 3 feasible layouts to race on due to safety, in iRacing, the inclusion of the oval and the lack of safety concerns gives it a stunning 9 versions drivers can choose from. The modern GP layout is of course the most well-known, with its long history of hosting the Italian Grand Prix. But the oval and combined circuits allow those who thirst for more speed to satiate that craving with its insanely high banking. Indeed, incredible velocities are a staple of just about every version you can race here. Draft battles are not uncommon no matter which car you're racing, but the inclusion of the chicanes makes using an outbraking maneuver a much more tricky way of overtaking. The circuit is notorious for drivers getting tangled up with each other while running side by side in these slow and cumbersome corners. In fact, one of the greatest dangers for drivers is the first few laps when the field is still clumped together and attempting to navigate them 2 and 3 wide. While there are other modern circuits with high-speed straights, the fact that Monza sits inside the Royal Park just north of Milan and is still tightly lined with trees heightens the sense of speed here. All in all, Monza is unmatched in its history, thrills, and great racing. Its significance in motorsports history and culture is sure to be unchallenged for years. Well, this should be a fascinating finale to what has been a very tight season. DJ, what can we expect with both prototypes and GTV cars racing out here?
Well, Joe, in a word, you can expect a very, very interesting race. Yes, this is the Temple of Speed, as it is known the whole world over. But the high curbs around the chicanes at this circuit are going to throw up a massive challenge, both at the LMP2s and the GTEs. None of these cars really like to take a good amount of curbing. We've heard a couple of the Porsche drivers before the race in particular talking about how they were struggling over the curbs. So that's going to be the toughest area that you're going to look at. In terms of that multi-class battle that seems to determine the order of every week's running, it's gonna be a bit of hit or miss here today. Yes, there are plenty of wide open, flat out straightaways to get those passes done, but it is gonna be so very easy to get caught up behind slower traffic. The chicanes all around this circuit are really only single lane. The only way to get a pass done is to get that good draft slipstream down one of the long straightaways and get ahead of the car in front of you before you head into the braking zone. If you try to go too wide, it's gonna end up being a little tricky. So I think you're going to see a lot of strategy from trying to overtake today.
Sure should give us a wild one in some ways out there, especially with so much on the line. But today's race is brought to you by SimMSA. Simulation Motorsports Affinity provides many consulting services, from completely customizing simulators to managing teams, individual drivers, and complete events. They're working hard to bring everyone together at one place to support and promote sim racing internationally. Find out how you can bridge the gap between virtual and real motorsports at SIMMSA.net.
The PRL LeMans series is also brought to you by NinjaTrader. Ready to compete against the financial markets? Supporting over 60,000 users across the globe, NinjaTrader provides award-winning trading software and brokerage services. NinjaTrader is always free to use for advanced charting, backtesting, and trade simulation. Visit NinjaTrader.com to get started with a risk-free trading simulator and start tracking your performance.
Today's broadcast is also proudly sponsored by Butt Kicker. Butt Kicker products add an incredible immersion and realism to any game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. Check them out at thebuttkicker.com. Now, as we take a glance at the championship, starting with the prototypes, this is one of the ones I was mentioning that shouldn't really be too close. And I know it says 16 on here, but it's 30 points between Christophe Herbinot and Felipe Ruiz, with more points that he lost due to penalties. So he won't have an ability to fight for the championship, because unless we get a lot more cars in that field showing up, there's just not enough for him to fall, for Ruiz to fall down in the points. Now, in the GTE championship, up at the top of there, it is Stephen Ash. This one is 16 points apart, but Ash has to only finish higher than 9th for him to take home the championship today. That's not going to be too difficult of a task, even with the craziness of the chicanes here around Monza. But hopefully it will at least give us some interesting running, as the rest of the drivers are still fighting for spots there in the championship. What about the team's championship here, DJ?
Well, Joe, in that team's championship, Punto CL Racing has a 37-point lead, and much like the other two championships you were just talking about, that's going to be a pretty unassailable gap. Delta Sport U4K may be able to do it with a little bit of luck and a solid once you finish, but I'm going to think that Punto is most well on their way to winning the championship crown here. As we look back in the field, third place NinjaTrader LMP2 way down the order there, as is Final Lap, Team Yellow, and Torque Freak Racing. So that battle for P1 pretty much out of reach, but it may swing if there's a little bit of bumping and rubbing as we go along.
Now let's take a look at the GTE team standings as well. And RSR by G Performance well behind Frozen Speed Full Send Racing. Don't think that they'll honestly have enough to be able to overtake them mathematically. Vector by RSR are relatively tight behind. They could manage to sneak up into second place. And then from there on down, it seems to be split pretty far between SRT, eSport Green, and SimRacing Premium. So unfortunately, not much intrigue except for the battle for second place there. Let's take a look at the race details here and what we've got in store today. As we mentioned, it's the finale, and it is a 60-minute race tonight. It is open setup in this series, so drivers who are trying to trim out these cars for speed can do so to their desire, but there's always that trade-off in the slower corners on where you can find speed there. Now, they have penalties that get handed out very quickly if you abuse the track limits or run into other cars. 13 incidents, you get a drive-through. 18, you're actually fully disqualified. And then for 38 points maximum, you have to get all the bonus points available, which includes the fastest lap, the pole, and 3 incidents or less, along with the win, of course, which is what the championship is going to depend on for a few of our drivers today. So that's why we bring that up. Currently, Felipe Ruiz has the top time in the prototypes. Michael Ross, who's not on the track right now after only 2 laps, they get 4 of them. Ross has abandoned the remainder of his laps, so he seems pretty confident with that 1:43.5.
Well, Joe, it was something that I heard a couple of the drivers talking about before the drivers briefing. The 2 drivers behind him, Ovando and Ash, and Montini as well, as you see there, Ash crossing the line. That's going to bump him up to second place. The Porsche drivers were talking about a sort of a mysterious loss of speed. They just didn't feel like they were fast enough here, and that's a bit of a surprise. We've normally seen those Porsches be very quick in a straight line, so it may be something that comes in the draft or when they are in race trim. That'll come alive.
Yeah, that's true. It's going to be a different game with all the other cars around them. This is Karl Modoff, winner last round, took his second victory of the season at Motegi, but that lap didn't count for him. So instead, we look to Christian Eisler, As Eisler crosses, that looks like an outlap for him as well, as that was slow.
It was indeed. We watched one of those Porsches that we just talked about, Boris Ovando here coming to the line. That looks like an outlap for him. And remember, with these maybe some alternating setups here, trying to figure out what the best way is to go here. Yes, the common idea is to go with a low downforce setup, maximize the speed down the straightaways. But one of the things that can gain you the most time around this track is adjusting the brake bias of all things.
You know, that kind of makes sense to me, honestly, because there's so many heavy braking zones around here that if you can just push that little bit harder into it, I could see where you could gain some time. Mac Miller, who is in 8th, looks like he's also coming back out in that Porsche using that split strategy on the laps. Teddy Lowendick in the meantime at 45.3, not going to be quicker than his best time, so he'll stay in P10. Christoph Herbino has since overtaken Ruiz. A 35.8 puts him up to the provisional pole. So that is a change over in our prototype class. Vorse, in the meantime, crosses the line and is going to park it as well. He appears to be done with his qualifying.
Raymond Day able to improve his position by 1 there, bumping himself up to 6th place. Here comes Carl Modoff, last week's winner, perfectly within the grounds to do what he's doing there, cutting it low. That is going to be a faster lap for him, bumping him all the way up to 2nd.
And only 11 thousandths off of Christoph Herbino. Felipe Ruiz as well, about 1/4 tenth of a second away from pole position. It is incredibly tight up at the front. We're watching Uthman Alawi, another driver mathematically who could potentially try and take the championship, but it is an absolute long shot.
Yeah, it very much is. Here comes Ovando pulling it into the pits with less than a minute to go here, so that's going to end his session. Horacio Calquin coming across the line. Calquin unable to improve on that one. Now Rafael Russo in one of those Corvettes. These are one of the cars that are very squirrely under heavy braking. They are very tricky to get wound up around this track. Russo crosses the line. Good lap for him. That's a 1:43.8. That's going to bump him up to 3rd.
Just behind Alawi, who we saw head onto the front row when we watched him cross. Ted Lowendick, who's on his final flyer, takes the 72 out of Parabolica. Let's see if he can go faster than that 44.6. He does, a 44.4. Will put him into 9th, at least a couple positions quicker.
It does. It looks like the only guy we've still got out on track is Uthman Alawi, I believe. Not sure if he's going to be able to get this lap in time, though.
Indeed, he won't. That is the end of our qualifying. So let's go through the starting grid. Christoph Herbino starts in the pole position with Carl Modoff in 2nd. Felipe Ruiz, who is looking pretty much locked in as champion at this point, starts from 3rd. Owen Watts will be starting 4th, and then it's Horatio Calquin in 5th. To his outside, Christian Eisler hasn't had a podium since round 5. He'll be looking for better results than he's had recently. Raymond Day starts from 7th, and Tiensai Leighton in 8th. Only 10 cars here running today, 9 cars rather, in the prototypes. Byron Daly is the last of them.
In those GTEs, Michael Ross, our 2nd place in that championship, is doing exactly what he needs to do, getting a point for fastest lap, or for the pole lap, and behind him will be Uthman Alawi, followed by Rafael Russo. Stephen Ash, our points leader, starting off 4th. He will be okay in that position, but he's still going to want to be going forward as much as possible to win the championship outright. Boris Ovando will line up to the outside of him in row 7, followed by Federico Montini and Alessandro Di Tullio. Behind him, Tyler DeZube will line up 8th in class, followed by Ted Lowendick. Mac Miller will be 10th, followed by Sean Romig in 11th. Francisco Montini will start off 12th, followed by Brian Vorse in 13th. Brett Barrett and Jerome Bethune will round out your GTE field.
Now, interestingly, this does change things slightly with Stephen Ash not taking the pole position. That's one bonus point that has been denied him. He still has 2 others, so 37 points is now the maximum he is able to get. Now, I'll have to double check the points table to see where exactly he needs to finish to ensure it. I believe it now needs to be 8th position. Yes, 8th position, because it's a 1-point difference. So still very doable. All he has to do is keep catastrophe from happening to him, and he can essentially cruise home.
Yeah, exactly. You know, we talk about it a lot when we look at these championships about how you have to manage your expectations as a driver. You get into the car and you want to go all out, you want to win. But what separates the best from the rest is those that can think about the championship. It's the old Alain Prost way of thinking about it. Maximizing points, not necessarily going for win it or bin it.
As the Porsche pace car leads them away. What a disappointing season for Christophe Herbinot that it has been. 30 penalty points that he has racked up so far, and he's actually 30 points back from Felipe Ruiz heading into this round. If it wasn't for all the issues that he had on track, he would be tied coming into today's race and have a realistic chance at winning the championship. With some of our GTE drivers heading down towards Parabolica, and there is our rather small prototype field here today. Needed 23 cars at least for Herbinot to have a chance mathematically to try and take the championship. Obviously that's not the case, as they are now closed to new entries. Let's see if he can still take another victory home as we come out of the final corner, and the Porsche pace car now ducks in. Herbinot waiting, staying very patient, and now he goes. Great jump by Christophe. Karl Modhoff behind him. Almost gets overtaken by Owen Watts, who had a run and then had to check up. Felipe Ruiz following as they accelerate down towards the Rettifilo chicane. Is everybody going to be safe through? This is a real pinch point, especially at the starts. So far, so good. Little door banging between Watts and Ruiz. Oh, we got a spin. That's Cal Quinn and Eisler and another car getting into it. Let's check back in on the GTE start.
GTE's now having to pick their way through those stranded LMP2s. That's going to cause a little bit of chaos, but it was a good start for Michael Ross. He went very, very early, but Alawi, Russo, Ash, and Ovando, your top five, exactly how they started, Joe.
Oh boy, Eisler looks extremely wounded as he's incredibly slow. Ross still leading the way with Alawi chasing close behind. You know, it's not just avoiding disaster with the other GTE cars that I think Ash needs to be concerned with. It's also trying to keep from having incidents like that. Actually, as we go to replay, Ash just ran in to another car and went off track. Let's stick with this. Actually, if we stay on this replay and go to Ash, we'll see the incident coming into the first Lesmo.
You can see there, Joe, as we watched that beginning there with Eisler et al., just what can happen in these curves around Monza. It's an absolute stack-up. So here we go, following Stephen Ash. This is him going through Curva Grande, going down into De La Roggia. That is going to be him battling very, very close alongside here.
I'm trying to figure out who that other Porsche is that he runs into as the Folson Racing driver through the first Lesmo. He's going to come out side by side. This is exactly what he does not need, and just clips into them, both of them off into the grass. And a big hit. That's Ovando, unfortunately, that he made contact with.
And that's not great for Boris. We watch him here as he is now dead last in that GTE field. Looks like Horatio Calquin is calling it a day in the LMP2s. That car very, very stricken.
Same thing with Eisler, is now a DNF. Meanwhile, Herbinot leads Modhoff coming off of the De La Roggia chicane. 0.4 of a second between them. Interesting thing about what happened with Ash there, he was down to 9th place. He's got up a couple positions since then, so he is back to 7th now, but still, he was exactly where he didn't want to be for a brief moment.
Exactly, he was right in that danger zone, and he is now side by side with, it looks like one of the Montini brothers trying to fight it out. He's got by him. I think Montini may have damage. Looks very, very slow.
Ash has actually passed him now as we watch the LMP2s. And now we've jumped over to the GTEs. Ash trying to pull away from Mac Miller and actually gaining on Ted Lowendick.
Joe, this this is where a little bit of team strategy may come into play here. If you think about it, Mac Miller is Stephen Ash's teammate. Miller's going to want to try to keep up best he can, because if you can play that sort of oval draft game, it may be very, very helpful. But right now, it looks like Ash is about 3.8 seconds ahead of Miller, and he's just got his sights set on Teddy Lowendick.
And let's remember that Miller can also hand a position over if need be. Well, if he winds up in front of him. Right now, he's behind him. Oh, and back just behind this group that we're watching, another car off. That's Federico Montini in the 5. He manages to catch it out of the Parabolica. There you can see it in way, but he's now been slotted into dead last of this GTE field.
Yeah, it looked like he just had a little bit of minor contact with Brian Vorst there, trying to hold it together. Both Montini brothers not exactly having a clean start to this race.
Back up to the leaders. Michael Ross, who is the one who is chasing for the championship, is doing exactly what he needs to do right now. And don't forget, he took that bonus point on the pole position. So he's still in contention to get the full 38 points. If he can finish there and Ash finishes in 9th place, the championship goes to Ross.
Joe, this is what Monza can throw up. We ride on board with Raymond Day, one of the out-of-position LMP2 drivers. Is coming up on Uthman Alawi right now. You're about to see this massive closing speed, but looks like Dave's hurt. He's got a massive problem with straight line speed.
He was one of the ones involved in that opening incident, so I think that's what's happening here. And this is going to be a long, hard day for him. He'll have a pit stop, but not for a long, long time. I almost wonder if he needs to just park this thing, because he's not really going to get many spots, as the 2 that's behind him have already retired and they're done.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Joe. This is just going to be a hindrance there if he is going to be that slow down the main straight. You watch him here trying to overtake the GTE leader, Michael Ross. They come out of the corner. Yes, the top speed of these LMP2s is a lot more, but the main area where they make it up is through the corners. They have a lot more downforce going through, so that is part of it as well, but they're not going to be as super fast.
Just behind them, you might see DeTulio in the 20 chasing Rafael Russo in the 24. There they are heading through the Rettifilio chicane right now. This is Corvette versus Corvette. And so far, one of them on the podium as we hop on board, watching from DeTulio from DeTulio's dash for just a brief moment. Not going to be able to get the pass done. A little too far back up towards De La Roggia as well.
Yeah, and that's a good job for Rafael Russo. You saw how aggressive he was with those curbs coming through the first 2 chicanes. Now, that Corvette can take a little bit of that punishment, but it's a relatively stiff suspension. It is, of course, based on an American muscle car, as it were. So it doesn't really like to do that. It tends to wobble a little bit when you take a lot of curb like that, and that wobble will upset the suspension, and it will upset the way you get the power down. So it's a very fine line in the way you've got to try to drive it if you're that aggressive.
Himself at arm's length from the number 20. Russo sends it into Ascari. He's only about 1.2 seconds back from Uthman Alawi currently, so this could become a 3-car fight depending on if Russo can catch a little whiff of that slipstream.
Yeah, and being that close, he's going to get just about a whiff with the massive speeds that you see here at Monza. I'm going to guess that that slipstream is going to be effective at about 1.5 seconds. So he's going to start to get a little bit of a draw, but it's not going to be as pronounced as if he were a little bit closer.
It's gone down to 1 second now, so he is gaining. Alawi heading up towards the Rettifilio chicane one more time. Still keeping Michael Ross within reach himself. That Ford GT you're going to see flash by every once in a while is the 67. Out of the first chicane. Anybody managing to gain anything? It doesn't really look like it. They all stay about where they were.
Yeah, nobody really being able to do it. It is one of the hardest things and sort of least understood things about Monza. Yeah, you can get a mega draft going down these long straightaways, but at the same time, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be in a draft train where the guy ahead of you and the guy behind you are probably taking that same amount of draft as well, and so it all just kind of equalizes out a little bit.
It seems to watch from on board, looking back at the chasing Rafael Russo coming from the second Lesmo. Ooh, and down the looks like Russo's got it to 9/10 of a second. So once again, creeping forward on the 444.
Yeah, and let's see how they take it here through Ascari. You see Russo very, very light on the curbs, not going too aggressive. That's very helpful to him. I'm looking at our live timing and scoring, Joe. It's back down to just under a second. So this gap definitely ebbing and flowing a little bit as Corvette battles Porsche.
And if you want to follow our live timing and scoring and any of your favorite drivers, head on over to gsrc.tv. We're going to have it all happening live, and you can make sure and keep the action on your fingertips no matter where we point the cameras. Continuing to watch and pulling another 10th away. Looks like Alawi gets himself some comfort from Russo, if not briefly. As all this has been going on, the top three in the prototypes have been staying about half a second apart. Now, nobody's really been attacking one another. I can't tell if this is genuine pace or if this is drivers trying to think about fuel strategy.
You know, Joe, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. One of the things that we don't talk a lot about when we come to Monza, even though we should, is that fuel strategy. Because of the efficacy of these drafts coming down the straightaways, you really are able to save a whole bunch of fuel. And we've seen time and time again, if you can get a little bit of an overcut, just eke out maybe 1 or 2 more laps on a tank, that can really help you. And I've got to think Owen Watts, yeah, there you see, he's got the pace. He just set the fastest lap of the race. I think if we watch him here and he's a little less aggressive, a little more cautious going through these corners, I'm going to put full money behind these saving fuel.
Looked pretty strong through there. Got it down to 0.3 of a second through the first chicane. Coming off, he falls back a little bit with that accordion effect. It's Christoph Herbeno who has been pushing the air for all three of them, doing the most work and sucking up the most fuel. Is that going to come back to bite him later?
It might. And the other thing to keep in mind here is some of these guys that started out front, so Herbeno and Modoff, they may have taken a look at their qualifying times and have had a separate setup if they were in the lead. So it could be a situation similar to Mercedes in Formula One, where their cars are trimmed out and really designed here to run in clean air, whereas Modoff and Watts may be set up to take a little bit more advantage of the draft.
Certainly be. We're only 10 minutes into this thing. Still plenty left on the cards as they all swing it out of Ascari, flirting with those inside curbs. Quite tall around here. Not so tall down through Parabolica. And now, we've had a couple GTE cars head into the pits since we weren't looking. I think Ovando to repair some damage. And I just saw Federico Montini head in. Not sure if that's for damage or if it's just an extremely early scheduled stop. I doubt it's scheduled, to be honest.
Yeah, I did too, Joe. Yeah, and if you saw him before that, you can kind of see it there. He was running without a hood, and it just got repaired. So I think that is Montini just going, I got to come in here.
Yeah, just way too down on power. Unfortunately, down on straight line speed. Now, the LMP leaders have come to within 0.3 of each other this time. It's getting tighter. At what point do we see Watts or Modoff try an attack, or do they even want to?
You know, I'm not sure, Joe. The other thing to keep in mind, big wobble from Herbeno.
He catches it, and he's on the one place where it's very difficult to try and pass, as it's a short run up to the first Lesmo. So a big mistake from the 92 coming out of De La Roja.
Yeah, and what that really did is it checked up his teammate Carl Modoff behind him to Owen Watts. So Watts is definitely looking very, very strong here. That gap between the two of them is only 2.8 seconds as they blast towards Ascari.
Coming out of that third and final chicane. Yeah, Modoff is much more on the back foot here. If Watts gets himself a decent run down the pitch straight, he could move into P2 here. Let's see what his intentions are. Watts is in the white car, you see. The second black and red machine, that is Carl Modoff, the number 948. And it is a decent run for Owen Watts. The 14 sucks up behind him. Is this going to be an easy pass, or is he going to have a hard time and have to work for it?
Well, the one thing that's going to complicate things is traffic ahead of him, but it looks like Watts thought about it, decides to dive back into line, but that's going to be a massive check up there for Karl Modoff. That's Brett Barrett in the GTE ahead of him.
Barrett, the last of our GTEs running currently, and he's just going to stay off to the right side. Nice awareness there from the 32. That Corvette making sure that he's well outside of the racing line and makes it clear his intentions. This does spread apart the top three a bit more than what we saw before, as Bertome cuts the course over shooting De La Roja briefly, and he's going to lose that spot to Brett Barrett with that error. Meanwhile, look at this. Watts now within 1/10 of a second. Coming up to the second Lesmo. Doesn't poke his nose out. Knows he needs to wait for a better opportunity, and that honestly loses him car lengths.
Yeah, Joe, that's really bad luck there for Owen Watts. You know, looking at the Lesmos, it's almost like running an oval circuit in the States here in an open wheeler. You have to time when you catch it just right. You do not want to be that close coming through the second Lesmo. That's a very high-speed corner. You need maximum downforce on the car, and running that close to an LMP2 like that in the dirty air, that's really going to upset the aerodynamic balance in the car. You can't get the run off the corner that you need to make the pass on the scar.
Be able to be close enough. He's still about 4/10 back here onto the main straight as we watch over his dash. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to reel him in like we saw last time. He still will close the gap. It's 3/10. They come down to the braking, down to 2/10. Watts just decides it's not worth trying to poke his nose out from here. Now, this is in front of Felipe Ruiz. You can see the red 58 is down to 1.4 seconds. Ruiz started in third, so he's lost a position since the beginning of this race. I'm sure he wants that back.
Most certainly, and the way he's driving here, he's doing this very well, just slow and methodical around this crazy circuit. There you see trying to minimize inputs on that steering wheel. Ruiz hoping Modoff and Watts continue to battle here. Ooh, Modoff had a big bobble through the first Lesmo.
They're starting to lose touch with Herbino as well. It's about 1.7 seconds up to our leader. So drifting away from the top spot and falling back into the fourth spot, unfortunately. A little bit of a look, just showing himself in the mirrors of Modoff. Owen Watts making sure that the 948 is aware, and a lot of traffic in front of them. Unfortunately, that's Vorse who stays to the right side, and Montini who stays to the left. They're able to navigate that. That, however, slowed up Christophe Herbino. Wow, and just as well, that goes from 1.7 seconds down to 3/10 in the flash of an eye.
Just when he thought it was out, they pull him back in. This battle back to a three-way fight right here. Modoff really starting to come up behind his teammate. He looks like he's got a good run. I don't know if he's going to take it. He's going to come to the inside. Here comes Modoff.
He's got an overlap, but he's going to have to outbrake him to the inside. He's much better on the binders, and the teammate of Herbino lets him through. Could have been a little bit of an easy pass as Christophe not wanting to take out Karl. However, he gets the shot coming off of Rettifilio. He'll look around the outside. It's a longer way around, but all he needs is that little bit of an overlap since it's the inside. Breaking down into De La Roja, and he pays it right back, gets into the lead.
On again, off again. Good little back and forth for the two of them, but that still keeps Owen Watts right behind them. And don't look now, but Felipe Ruiz, courtesy of all of that battling in front, has gotten the gap down to under a second.
At the wrong place at the wrong time. That is Sean Romig, who unfortunately has to stay way wide, and Owen Watts now spies a chance to sneak by Karl Modoff, but no, he's going to lift before they hit the braking. All this has really brought in Ruiz now. He is within 3/10 of a second. It's a four-car fight for the lead.
It is really starting to get spicy here. It is so good here. You see as we ride on board with Felipe Ruiz now looking at above. These cars pretty much equidistant to each other, gumming down into Parabolica.
Wow. This is the sort of draft train battles that we're getting used to seeing here at Monza, here on iRacing. As they come along the front stretch, Looks like Herbino is going to get himself pretty clear of all the action as Owen Watts now is going to try to make the move. Down to the inside of Karl Modoff. Modoff once again breaking a little bit earlier, and Watts now into P2.
Owen Watts really doing a good job here, and this is exactly what he needs to do. Split the two teammates up so they are unable to work in tandem.
So far, so good. And of course, he can be reattacked by Karl, unless Karl finds Felipe Ruiz trying to get onto the podium. Down into De La Roja, just behind Ted Lowendick at this point. And the next cars up that they get to are fighting for position, one of them for a championship, Ash and Dezube.
Yeah, and so this is where Ash is going to have to be very, very careful. The last thing he wants to do is get taken out by one of these fast LMP2s.
In fact, he's just getting lapped by our leader now, Christoph Herbino, up to nearly 2 seconds ahead of those fighting LMP2s. Goes on by. Nice and easy for Stephen Ash. Still trying to stay ahead of Dezube. Now he is within where he needs to be to clinch the championship. 8th or better will do it for Stephen Ash, and he's in 5th. So he would have to lose a number of positions from here.
Yeah, Joe, but we've seen at Monza, anything can happen. So if I'm Stephen Ash, I want to be as safe as humanly possible as Watts picks his way on through everybody, as does Modoff and Ruiz.
Boy, Ruiz got extremely close to Dezube there, coming into the Parabolica. Thankfully did not make contact. 2nd, 3rd, and 4th all in a line down into the first chicane once more.
Down here for the moment. They've got a few other slower cars, but that is a bit up the road from them, so they'll have a moment to breathe here before they have to start worrying about those GTEs again.
Out of the Curva Grande and into De La Roja. They do have more traffic in front. DeTulio is the next one, 4th in the GTEs. We are down to only 21 drivers left on this track. We've lost Federico Montini, Boris Ovando, and Horatio Calquin. Amazingly, Eisler got the car fixed and is back on the track and trying to do what he can, but he's in 8th, and he is 6 laps down from the next car up, which is Raymond Day in P7.
Yeah, it's going to be an absolutely mega gap for Christian to come back from, but I love the fighting spirit here. There you see Owen Watts kicking up a lot of dirt on the exit of Ascari. You can do that. You can kick up a little bit without triggering those off tracks like we talked about at the beginning, but he's got to be careful not to go too hard on that line. On the outside or the inside, Joe, very easy to get too much curve there and send the car right into the wall.
Now they've hit the podium drivers here in the GTE class. Rafael Russo along with Uthman Alawi. As much as Karl Modoff was under threat from Ruiz, he's regaining time on Owen Watts here.
Yeah, he really is. He's pulling him back in. Oh, but Felipe Ruiz, big bobble there with Alawi and Russo. That really cost him some time.
Yeah, slight bit of contact side to side with the 444. And they both got away with it. And Alawi expressing a slight bit of displeasure over the radio over it, but nothing crazy. Just sounded like he was not impressed.
It is the age-old battle here on iRacing, Joe, between the GTEs and the LMP2s in a fight that will never, ever get resolved. But there you see on your screen, Karl Modoff getting held up a little bit behind your leader, Michael Ross. So that's going to give Owen Watts a little bit more breathing room and allow for Ruiz to catch up a little bit.
Yep. Now they finally are free, at least for the time being. Urbano doesn't have anybody from the GTEs for probably a good third of the lap. And actually, it's not even GTEs, it's Raymond Day next up that he needs to lap. Raymond, of course, we know is very much limping around currently with a damaged car, but he's trying to make the best of it.
And, you know, normally on a lot of tracks that we see in just an hour-long sprint race like this, that may be a little bit of a false hope type situation. Crazy as Monza, it can happen.
Had a change of position as Dzube managed to get by. Oh, this was a slowdown penalty. If we watch, yeah, we'll have to back up a little bit because Ash cut the course coming through the Ascari chicane. Here it is right here. Sends it in, and looks like he was just too hot. Went through the gravel to escape hitting the curbs, and in the meantime, you automatically are told to give time back that you have gained through checkpoints. And that allows Dzube up into 5th.
Yeah, Joe, and that looks like an instance where we were talking about the brake bias early in this broadcast. The brake bias there, obviously, whether you put more of that brake pressure on the front or the rear tires, putting it on the rear gives you a little bit more of a turn through the corner. You can trail brake a little bit more and get the car to rotate better. Putting it on the front means you stop in a straight line better, and I think it just locked it up there for Stephen Ash.
So he's sticking with it. He wants back into 5th, make this as safe possible so that he can take this championship home. Right now, his rival's still doing everything he needs to do up at the front, and indeed, as I look down the timing charts, Ross does have the fastest lap. Boy, really stalking this Porsche as Ash is trying to size him up and see if he can find a way by.
Yeah, Stephen very much not wanting to send a late race maneuver here. He just wants to be slow and collected. I think he's playing a little bit of the mind games, but great run out of Ascari as they fly towards Parabolica.
Now, I don't know if he wants to make the pass here, though. He is going to look around the inside into Parabolica, but he's going to give the slipstream right back to Tyler Dzube on the main straight here. He could wind up regretting this decision. Let's see if this is going to switch around.
Yeah, I got to agree with you, Joe. I think that is a little bit of a miscalculation in terms of where to pass. You can see how close Dzube is already, right up behind him. He's checking up, though, Dzube.
Interesting. Oh, and Alawi's off. Ootman Alawi is off through the first chicane. This is another one of our championship contenders, but him slipping back into 4th with this error is not going to do him any favors. He just goosed it too hard.
Yeah, he did a little bit too much power on the exit of the curb, and I think it didn't help that caused a little bit of understeer and got his right front tire onto the kitty litter there. So that sends Alawi around. He is now in 4th place still, but the gap between Ash and himself has definitely come down.
Yeah, if Ash passes Alawi, then he can pretty much guarantee himself that he's not going to take the championship. In fact, he can guarantee himself that he can't take the championship as he needs to outscore him here today. Almost to the halfway point. Still haven't seen any scheduled stops. Waiting for drivers to come in. Down in 5th place in the LMP2s. Now, Tiensai Leighton, I believe, lost this spot to Byron Daly recently. And he's going to try and get this one back. They're heading onto the pit straight. And it's Daly that you see in the red and white. And then the black and red is Leighton, who we ride on board with. He'll get to the inside. He's got to outbrake him and finish the job, though, coming into the Rettifilio chicane. Oh, very strong on the brakes. Holy cow. Maybe too strong. Locks him up. Byron Daly trying to get through the corner, but he's way offline as they accelerate out of there. It's going to go to Leighton.
Great move for Leighton there. That is just absolutely mega, forcing Daly into a mistake and move Tiensai Leighton up into the top 5. But, oh, here comes Byron Daly. I don't think he's done yet.
I was going to say, I don't think this is over. And Byron Daly, watching from behind, had the slipstream, but then lifted a little bit as they came into the second chicane. Now, it's through the Lesmos, both of them hoping to get the best launch possible out of the second apex so that they can maybe have a chance into Ascari. Let's see if either one does it.
It looks like there may have been a little bit of bobble running over the curbs there for Byron Daly. I think Leighton is going to be just a bit too far ahead for him to really try to make a pass here.
To the surprise of absolutely no one, Raymond Day comes into pit lane and actually takes a tow once he gets there. Oh, well, that was bizarre. He had already passed the cones and just decided to stop the car. Maybe he just had so much damage that it was affecting his fuel consumption, and he didn't have enough to get to the end. Out of Parabolica themselves, getting ready to lap lap Raymond Day is Leighton as they go on by. Byron Daly sitting in 6th. This might mean, yeah, Raymond Day just exited the race. We are now down to only 7 of our LMP2s left running.
And that is just more and more good news for Felipe Ruiz, as is the fact that he just set the fastest lap of the race this last time by. So Ruiz doing what he needs to do to make sure he gets the championship.
So still the battle for second rages on. And Ruiz is free to fight here. He doesn't have to worry about where he finishes because he has already been crowned champion effectively. As he follows Modoff and Watts down to the Ascari chicane, and this time it's Watts who goes off into the gravel. Oh, and off into the gravel coming off the chicane for Carl Modoff. Everybody's struggling except for Ruiz.
Jumping on board with Owen Watts here, you can see just how bumpy that path is. Joe, what happened was he just missed his braking zone ever so slightly, ran a little bit too far into that first part of Ascari, and that bopped him up into the air. It's the same problem I was talking a little bit about with the GTEs there. There you see it on the left-hander, gets too much of those sausage curbs, and that does not allow him to settle the car back. It looks like Modoff just had a little bit of incident fixation and carried too much speed through the exit.
Yeah, I think he got pinched in as well. That just compromised his line. So Watts is down to 4th, and Ruiz is up to 3rd. Modoff moves up to 2nd place, rather. Is he a little bit damaged from going off course, though? Because Ruiz caught him quite quickly now.
It's a really good point, Joe. The under trays of these LMP2s are very, very sensitive, and even just the slightest little run off the tarmac, like you saw Modoff do, can spell the difference between a good lap and a bad lap, and that may be what's happening here for Modoff.
This is 2nd, 3rd, and 4th that you're watching on screen, fighting about 4.5 seconds behind Christoph Herbeno, who has been leading this race from the pole for almost its entirety at this point. And we're past the halfway marker just about 20 seconds ago. Once again, just clipping the dirt coming off the last chicane. Carl Modoff pushing this car as hard as possible to try and break the draft to Ruiz.
Yeah, he is really and truly hustling it through here, just trying to find something, anything that he can do. Coming up on a little bit of lap traffic here again. This is Brett Barrett and Jerome Bethune, but they're working their way around now.
Both are going to stay off to the left-hand side. And you can see those LMP2s trying to steal that little bit of slipstream from the car ahead to get whatever advantage they can. Popping out to the inside. Felipe Ruiz gets close, but not close enough. Modoff will retain it through the first chicane. They are starting to drop, unfortunately. Owen Watts, who got held up by the traffic in the background.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Watts really the big loser there out of all of that, and he is now going to be over a second behind Ruiz.
Watch this. An update, Christian Eisler, who is still out there running, is going to overtake Raymond Day soon enough. So Eisler will be able to jump up into 7th, but he's got to hope for yet more cars to DNF if he wants to gain any more positions.
Yeah, it's going to be a real hard battle for Christian here. Very hard. This has just been a very rough season for Christian, making a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes and just not having luck fall his way.
Another little weave from Ruiz in the background. It's clearly trying to get a little psychological with Carl Modoff, trying to make him think and watch and just maybe miss his braking point. As this all is happening, we've also had a fight starting to brew between the 72 and the 79. This is for 7th and 8th in the GTEs. And it's Mac Miller on the tail of Ted Lowendick.
And if you remember, Joe, these two drivers seem like they are just joined at the hip race after race. I believe it was last week at Lotegi these guys had a battle for the majority of the race.
I think you're right. So we are on board with Mac Miller now, chasing Teddy. Coming up to the first Lesmo. A lot of banking through this corner. And up and onto the crest. and back down once again out of the second Lesmo, carrying downhill slightly and then dipping underneath the old oval. This is a good run for Teddy, or for Miller rather, I should say. Teddy leading, and just a tiny look coming into the Ascari chicane does not produce much. Matt Miller still waits behind.
You know, Joe, with all of that speed that we saw him carrying there, I have to think a little bit of that weaving back and forth he was doing on the straight leading up to Ascari may have just blunted his momentum just enough to prevent that move being done. So now we see him just stay behind in the draft as they come through Parabolica. He should have a good advantage if he can get on the power nice and early. There he does, lets the car run a little bit wide. You are going to lose a little bit of traction on the left side of the tires there, running over that green painted area, and that's going to be just enough to allow Teddy Lowendick to pull away a little bit.
Racing a fantastic race today. Looking to keep this 7th spot, finish on a high note. Lowendick sitting 8th in the championship, and that's not going to be a high note at all. In fact, that's going to be quite a low note now that Miller easily overtakes him from that slowdown penalty.
Yeah, Teddy just absolutely missing his braking there. And Joe, one of the reasons that it makes that dive into Rettifilo so hard for these drivers is because the brakes are frankly very cool by the time you dive in there. It's not like a lot of other circuits where you have constant braking that keeps everything up.
Looks like a few of our drivers towards the back of the field in the LMP2s are in. Layton and Daly are both in. We're starting to get towards the end of their window as well, so I suspect they won't be the only ones next time by. Shouldn't see them take tires here, but we should see them get just the splash and dash and then be on their way.
Exactly, and so there you see them just waiting. Bit of longer stops than I would have anticipated for both of them. I wonder if they picked up a little bit of damage that they had to have repaired. 23 and 25 seconds for Layton and Daly, respectively.
No change there. They stay in the same positions. And let's see if Herbino decides to come in this time by 92, heading around the Parabolica. It's a thirsty track. Indeed, there he goes. So, Herbino is in. Modoff, though, stays out. And Ruiz is in. Interesting.
As is Owen Watts in the back there. So, Joe, we were talking about at the beginning of the broadcast, Carl Modoff just being a little content to stay behind in his teammates' tire tracks. I think that let him save a little bit more fuel.
Now, this isn't too unusual. Modoff known for being quite good at fuel saving, getting himself that one extra lap and a slightly shorter pit stop. For them all to exit. To 23 and 25 seconds for our other two who have pitted here today. And Herbino is going to be 25 seconds, so a pretty standard stop just for fuel, and he'll return back to the track. Ruiz also moving behind him, so is Owen Watts. They're way ahead of Layton and Daly, who are many seconds behind the pair of them. But now we have to watch and wait and see what this man does.
Exactly. He's working his way around here. Now, this is Teddy Lowendick, who we were following earlier, as well as Sean Romig up ahead of him. That's going to slow him down ever so slightly as he comes out of Ascari. He'll be able to pick up a nice draft here, though, from Sean Romig. Now darts to the inside, lines himself up for Parabolica. This is the moment he's got to see.
Great fuel saving once again from Carl as he plunges down into the pits, and now it is his turn. Was this enough to try and regain the time on Christoph Herbino and deny him a 5th win of the season?
Well, Joe, looking at the times, when he dove into the pits, he was about 48 seconds ahead of his teammate, Christoph Herbino. Pit stops are averaging around 49 to 50 seconds lane to lane. So, Modoff is stopped. He's getting his fuel as Herbino makes his way out of Ascari.
As the clock ticks up Whoa, whoa. And Herbino was off into the grass there for a brief moment, coming up towards the braking into the parabolica. He's using every inch of the track. Modoff is off and running, but again, he's got to get his momentum up. He's past the cones. He's moving. This actually might be it. It was 2 seconds quicker. It's going to be extremely tight. Modoff down into the braking, and Modoff is ahead.
Way to go, Carl. Ooh, clips that inside sausage curve. That's going to slow him up, but he's able to stay ahead. But momentum's going to shift back to Christoph Herbino. He's on the inside going through Curva Grande.
Oh, but that's going to be the outside into De La Roja. I think that was a smart move from Carl. Just knew that he had to play defense farther up the road, even though he doesn't have his nose ahead. As long as he's strong on the brakes, no, he can't be. Tires not quite up to temperature, and Herbino is going to be able to ease back into the lead after a critical mistake from Carl gave away what could have been a race win.
Oh, that is an absolute heartbreak there from Carl Modoff. An absolutely picture-perfect pit stop. But now he's got to be a little bit worried, Joe. He was only stationary in the box for 23 seconds. That is the shortest stop we've seen out of any of these LMP2s, so he may have short-fueled the car.
But if I know Carl, he knows just exactly how much to put in. Big defense coming down towards Ascari from Christoph Herbino that time. And they're going to have to try and get by Barrett. Oh, and I think that unfortunately caught out Christoph. Here comes Modoff at him once again, looking the long way around as they head towards the parabolica. They've got Jerome Bertome up ahead of them. He's in the middle of the track. He doesn't really have much place to go. He's going to duck to the inside nicely as it's a drag race coming down the main straight between two teammates.
Oh my goodness gracious, that's Herbino on the inside, Modoff to the outside. They are absolutely parallel as they cross the line, going down into the braking zone into turn one.
Modoff to the outside, Herbino to the inside. Christoph is going to be able to make the corner, but he is a little bit deep into it. Modoff tries to shoot off the corner. He's got the momentum. He might be able to get a little bit of an overlap as they come up to Curva Grande, but he's on the long way around. Once again, a longer distance. Momentum still helps him out as he pulls up alongside. They head towards the braking of De La Roja. This time he is deeper than his teammate. It is a reverse situation, and Modoff is able to get up to the front.
And you saw just how much momentum he had there, Joe. Almost getting on to the kitty litter outside of De La Roja. Amazing move, but that's right there is a lot for Ruiz.
We've got pit stops for our GTE drivers. DeTulio is in. Looks like Alawi pits and Ash as well as Mac Miller. However, Tyler DeZube stays out. So does Russo and Ross.
Looks like Teddy Lowendick doing the same thing. There you see drivers starting to make their way back out. 14-second stop for DeTulio and Alawi.
Yeah, much faster in these GTE cars to get fueled up and moving along. Ash is going to return. The good news for him in what looks to be 7th place. We got to go back to our leaders in the LMP2s because Herbino once again has a good run up the inside along with Carl Modoff. If they keep fighting like this, you can see him in the background. That is Felipe Ruiz, who has been gaining hand over fist. Looks like Herbino is going to be able to take the top spot this time.
Yeah, and it looks like there that put Carl Modoff on a little bit of a compromised line. He's able to get a good run out of Rafilo, though, and now starts to come back here. He's going to sit behind his teammate. If I were him, I would maybe try to focus on playing a little bit of leapfrog, pulling up ahead of Felipe Ruiz rather than duking it out in the next couple of laps.
Well, there's no championship for them to try and fight for. I can understand how fierce this is. They both want to end it on a win. With Herbino being able to take 5 wins, whereas Modoff just trying to get up to 3 wins on this season and go back-to-back, finish strong here. They come across Stephen Ash now. The lap GTE stays off to the right. Herbino approaching, and he's going to catch him just in the braking zone down into Ascari.
I thought for a second that was going to compromise him ever so slightly, but it looks like he was able to get out and get through and on the way. That is Stephen Ash that they are getting around, but that really hurt Carl Modoff with Felipe Ruiz now right behind him going down the straight towards Parabolica. Here comes Ruiz. No, thinks better of it.
Ooh, but he's certainly trying to make sure that Modov knows he's there. Ruiz, I'm sure, would love to try and change his stats to say 4 wins so that he can at least match Urbanos and say it wasn't just down to penalty points. I had him for this season. Defense coming up to Rettifilio, Modov, and then back to the racing line. That looked like a little bit of a lift from Ruiz once he saw that LMP2 change lanes.
Yeah, I think he didn't want any part of that. He'd much rather take a little bit of a surprise move if he could, Ruiz, that is. And now they come here through Curva Grande, working their way around. Doesn't look like Ruiz is going to have too much of a run here. I expect them to stay single file into De La Roggia.
And the leaders have now finished their pit stops in the GTE class. Ross returns in the lead. Russo is now in second. Tullio is up to third, ahead of Uthman Alawi. And this is for position. When did Russo catch Ross? And Ross does not fight it very hard.
No, he does not, and that's Russo was slower in the pit stop sequence than Ross was. So Ross just suffering on time there. Yeah, there you see it. Russo slower by about half a second.
Interesting. But if Russo's the slower one, then he was the one behind. Something must have happened to Ross. I'm going to double check here and see if he had an off or hit traffic poorly or what exactly happened that lost him out. It's very odd. Almost looks like pit entry. Ross was maybe too timid.
Yeah, I'm not sure there, Joe. It's just a weird situation for...
Up at the front of the LMP2s. Urbano briefly has this one. Will he have to hand it away? It looks like the traffic going to help him slightly. That's to Tullio. And Modov will be able to pull a slipstream, maybe gain a little bit of that back. They head into the braking. Ruiz doesn't try it this time. But is certainly threatening. Wonder if he's watching and waiting to see how this develops. He's still got a quarter of the race to go.
Yeah, he still has just under 15 minutes here. And if I'm Felipe Ruiz, I am just basically stalking these guys. I don't want to send the move too early. We have seen how easy it is to lose the position once you've made it. And so if I'm Felipe Ruiz, I'm very much in a happy position here right now.
I'd like to make an interesting note, and I've been trying to keep watch on what's happening here as we come by now the battle for the lead in the GTEs. It does appear that Ross might be just down a bit. He may have hit a curb or had a bump from somebody and has damaged his aero, because he just doesn't seem to be able to catch Russo in a straight line.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the situation... Oh, big off there for Karl Modov, off onto the outside of Parabolica. That's going to allow Ruiz through, and Modov into the pits.
Oh, no. I wonder if that's too many off tracks. This might be a drive-through penalty. Let's see if he just goes straight through or if he stops in his stall.
I feel like... Yeah, we're seeing that he's saying so over this car, just not happy with the handling here today. Yep, that's a drive-through, Joe.
Wow. Unfortunate. Karl Modov was in the hunt, and he is going to be furious with himself. Well, that separates our battle for the lead as Urbano's now 2 seconds ahead of Ruiz. We'll catch up with that if that closes in. But this battle for the top spot, Ross, if he is down on top speed, is going to have a heck of a time trying to overtake Rafael.
He really and truly is. He's just going to have to hope for traffic to catch him right. As we watch here, I believe that's Owen Watts working his way through them right here, splitting the difference through the second Lesmo.
That's just Owen Watts finding his own race here. Not really hassling either of them. Ford versus Chevy. Right now, Chevy holds the advantage. As they come through Ascari and off the chicane. Russo once again finding himself a couple more car lengths at 7/10 between them currently, with 12 minutes to go. They're also 3 seconds ahead of DeTulio. So if they do start messing around with each other, they can't do so too much because Alessandro could easily run them down and try to attack for a surprise victory.
Exactly, and I think also Michael Ross can't let himself get complacent, because if he does that, DeTulio will be able to come up very, very quickly. He's got that gap down to about 2.7 seconds right now. So DeTulio clearly has some speed. You can see him there in the back of your shot.
Let's give another glance to our championship leader briefly. Stephen Ash, he's into 5th still, and looks like he's about 10 seconds behind Utman Alawi, who sits in 4th. But there you see the number 11 Porsche. As things stand, he would still be our champion no matter what Russo or no matter what Ross and Alawi does here.
Yeah, exactly. As we said, we needed to finish 9th or above, and he is currently in that position right now. So this is all about just trying to keep consistency and not lose anything here for Stephen Ash.
I think Ash has certainly afforded a poor race every once in a while. He had a bad one at the start, or at least not a phenomenal one, I should say, at the start of the season. And then from there on, it's just been such incredible consistency and 4 wins along the way that has put him into this spot where he can really rest easy, even though he's not going to even be on the podium.
Exactly, Joe. We talk so much about when we're watching the race momentum, whether it's around the outside of the corner or however when you look at it. But really and truly over the course of the season, one of the most important things is momentum. If you are in a good groove as a driver, like Stephen Ash was in the middle part of this season, it is so incredibly easy to just put in good result after good result after good result and push your way towards a championship.
I may have been overly critical of that first round, by the way. Double-checked. He finished 5th. That is his worst result this season. That's just stunning. Meanwhile, we're looking at the top spot. Russo ahead of Ross.
Yeah, I think Michael Ross may have just sort of had a couple of bad laps or something there. He's got speed in this car, starting to maybe claw back in on Rafael Russo.
A theory, he had the quickest stop of anybody in the GTE field. I wonder if Ross realized early that he had underfueled it. This might be him just riding the slipstream to save some of that fuel till the end.
That's a very good call, Joe.
Especially considering he has regained this ground and held with him. It's looking a little bit suspicious here. If he starts to attack, then we know that he really was just playing possum, biding his time. We're down less than 10 minutes. Do we have a change for position between Romig and Lowendick here recently? No, it looks like they're still where they were before, but look at how close Lowendick is to him on our timing screens. There, now you can see them on the screen proper. This is coming out of the second Lesmo. That's Lowendick chasing in the 72 with his teammate Romig in front of him in the 71.
Riding on board with Ted Lowendick here, you can see just trying to pull up as much of that draft as he can as they go into the Ascari chicane. Watch it here, getting that car perfectly positioned against those sausage curbs, not taking too much all the way through that. Good line there for Teddy. That gap is sticking at about 0.5 of a second. Not being able to claw too much back in though.
Braking hard into the parabolica. Lowendick still chasing. Hoping that he can get something here in this last round. Maybe get one more spot just for pride. And they are actually fighting for position in the championship as well. 3 points between them, but just finishing one ahead won't do it. It'll rely on bonus points, I think, from there on whether or not Lowendick can overtake Romig. Ooh, and this is closed up in a big way. Ross is right on top of him now. Maybe he has decided he's saved enough fuel. They're going to be overtaken by Carl Modoff, our 4th place driver in the LMP2s.
Yeah, And Joe, I think Rafael Russo is really feeling the pressure. When they came out of Della Roggia, he went on a very, very defensive line, trying to blunt the momentum of Michael Ross and worked to just keep him at bay. Used Karl Modov as a little bit of a pick there to be able to get that to work effectively. He's now got a little bit of a gap, but it looks like that Ford GT of Michael Ross is very strong through the first sector of this lap.
7 minutes left to go. Ross could get himself yet another win on the way to a championship, and that would just be icing on the cake. Leighton, who sits in 5th, lets them go, trying to pull the slipstream. Russo immediately weaves behind him. They brake hard down into the Rettifilio. No pass attempt there. Ross is really pushing hard. I think maybe a little too hard. Almost looked like he overdrove the corner slightly.
Yeah, very slightly, and that was a really heads-up move from Rafael Russo. You saw him think about trying to go defensive, break that draft for Ross, and then he realized he could actually get a draft from Leighton up ahead of him, and that's exactly what he did, carried some good momentum through the corner.
It's going to be Byron Daly next, going past them. Daly is in sort of a battle with Leighton, but he's not very close, and it is only for 5th place, so he doesn't have to try and press the issue too hard. He can try and play patient, knowing that this is a fight for the lead in the GTE class. Now he'll get a clear run, and that's beautifully done by Byron.
Yeah, massive kudos to him there. That's exactly how you want to see an LMP2 driver react to GTEs ahead of you.
Braking hard down into Ascari as well. And that is where Ross looked incredibly strong, but only going in. Wow, coming off, suddenly he is 0.5 of a second back.
This is really starting to ebb and flow here. I'm not exactly sure what's going on for Michael Ross. Clocking down on about 5 minutes to go. He's starting to get into the now or never zone.
Exactly. I wonder if maybe he wasted an opportunity when he was nice and close, tucked up behind him. Eisler's going to pull him along. Eisler's still sitting 7th, unfortunately, and 6 laps down from the leaders in his class. Wow, this is way far behind this time for Michael Ross, the 67, who we ride on board with, heading through the first chicane. Would love to be this close coming the end of the straight, but you'll see that Corvette just get farther and farther away as they pick up speed.
Yeah, it really looks like he's got good acceleration off the line there through all of it. Now let's watch as they go through Della Roggia. Last time out, both cars taking a big chunk of curb through the second part of the chicane. Big one for both again, and Ross closes up.
This is what he's been looking for. Russo's going to be under threat, the 24. Probably watching his mirrors, but how much does he defend? Does he try to go offline at all? Slightly off the apex of the second Lesmo. And this is the closest we've seen Ross in a while. He's reeling him in. The slipstream's starting to kick in, but it's not as long of a straight as the front stretch, and they have to brake for Ascari.
Is that going to check up Michael Ross at all? He's able to stick relatively close behind, but again, a big boost of acceleration for that Corvette in front. Rafael Russo able to keep him at bay. The gap going back out to about 0.5 of a second.
Huge cloud of dirt and dust kicked up by Michael Ross coming off that last chicane. Into Parabolica. We've got 3.5 minutes left. I think we're going to be 2 laps to go next time by for Christoph Herbino, our leader overall. Keep an eye on that. Yeah, once again, look at that. Too far back. Russo just fast where he needs to be fast.
Yeah, Joe, looking at these lap times, watching these two for the last couple of laps, I think Michael Ross is starting to realize where he has got to make the move is going to be going into Ascari. It is a high-risk, high-reward position, but that's where he is strongest. He's got to make the move into that corner.
Out of Curva Grande. Once again, Ross just can't seem to get himself in touch with that vet, and I can report that indeed it is. Now 2 laps to go. Herbino is just crossing the line, starting the penultimate lap as the sun starts to come out over on the far side of the track here. second, Lesmo. Ross this time much farther behind than what we saw last lap. So certainly if he couldn't do it at 2/10 back, he's not going to do it at 5/10 back.
No, but this may be a little bit of a calculated risk here for Michael Ross, thinking that he maybe wants to try to set up a better run. I think part of the problem he was struggling with is he just carried a little bit of weird speed through the corner going into it. But there again, that Corvette just better off of the bike pull.
Making life awful frustrating for Ross as they come down. And this will be 2 to go for these drivers as well. Does he have anything to try and challenge that number 24 Corvette? Ahead of them, a little bit of lap traffic, but too far ahead, I think, for them to really catch Vorse. Now, we've been so focused on P1 and P2. Uthman Alawi, who remember was sent backwards a little bit, is suddenly right with DeTulio.
Yeah, he is closing in very fast as they come through the first chicane here. And now Alawi's been able to do what Stephen Ross is not. He's going to have a good run going into Della Rogia potentially.
Really trying to attack quickly. It looks like the Corvette going to try and defend from the Porsche. Around to the outside is a little bit of a blink. Almost sells him a dummy, and he's way down, closed in, and he's going to get him to go off track. He'll have to serve a penalty, and then tries to, and he's going to weave over to the side. I don't think that was an intentional block. He's trying to get out of the way. Still, that is going to allow Uthman Alawi to get up into third.
Well, look at genuinely looks like that he timed that exactly right. Just blunting a little bit of the momentum from Uthman Alawi has allowed for DeTulio to keep up right behind.
Yeah, I think he was trying to get out of the way there, and it just wound up being sort of, you're both trying to pass in a hallway, and each keeps making the same move. Oh boy, this is going to be intense. And both of them making mistakes. One too wide, one too far to the inside, coming off of the Ascari chicane. We are on the final lap for Christophe Herbino, who is halfway through here. And whoa, sending it deep down into the Parabolica. That's DeTulio, who parks it on the apex and sends the Porsche out wide. Alawi tries to keep the speed up, and the fight is on.
It's a drag race down the start-finish line as they take the white flag. It looks like Alawi's got a little bit more momentum here, but DeTulio, the one with the advantage on the inside.
As they brake hard, we'll try and hold it as long as we can, but it looks like it's going to go to DeTulio as we go over to Christophe Herbino, who will get another win. Victory here in Italy for Christophe to take win number 5, but he is not going to be the champion. That will go to Felipe Ruiz, who finishes second here today.
Amazing work for both drivers.
And look at this, Ross has got it back down to 0.4 of a second. He's once again on it. We're watching from the Ford GT. Can he deny Russo a victory? Russo currently sitting on none of them this entire season, but 6 top 5s. He is overdue. He's even got a fastest lap under his belt this season. Can he manage to hold off the incredibly fast Ford GT behind him down into the Ascari chicane? All he has to do is be smooth from here on out. It's looking good. Again, that great acceleration that we heard DJ talking about, giving him just the advantage he needs. Up to the Parabolica, the final round of the season, similar to what we saw in the prototypes. He won't take the championship, but Ross is going to take at least a podium here today as Russo wins here in Italy. Behind them, DeTulio just barely ahead of Alawi. He'll claim the podium. And how about Stephen Ash? Championship won from 5th. Some drama that cost him a little bit of a heart attack early on is going to be averted, and he will be your new owner of the crown here in the GTEs. That's going to wrap up our cars finishing. We're going to head to a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. Welcome back to Monza. The final round of the season here in the PRL LeMans Series gave a victory to Christophe Herbino, and despite winning half the races this season, he just couldn't keep from making mistakes that cost him penalty points, and Felipe Ruiz, who finished second today, took the championship with that finish. Owen Watts was third, rounding out the podium, with Carl Modoff finishing in P4. Tiensai Leighton finishing in fifth today. Byron Daly was not our last finisher, but he's the last one you'll see here in the LMP2s, taking that sixth place. And then Christian Eisler wound up in 20th overall, but in seventh in his class, way farther down.
Rafael Russo taking his first win of the season in dramatic fashion, holding off Michael Ross for the win here at Monza. Alessandro Di Tullio battling to the line with Uthman Alawi for an absolutely incredible way to finish out the podium. But the big story today, Stephen Ash in fifth place takes on your championship crown here for the GT. He's doing exactly what he needs to do today. Behind him, Tyler DeZube and Sean Romig, as well as Ted Lowendick and Francisco Montini. Behind them, Mac Miller and Brett Barrett, Jerome Bethune, all finishing one lap down to the leaders. Brian Vorse was another lap down, and there you see some of the guys who had some big problems early on, Christian Eisler and Raymond Day.
And we have our newly crowned champion, Felipe Ruiz, here to talk to us and to help him. He's got a translator, Paulo Munoz. Felipe, congratulations. As we always like to say, it is consistency that wins championships. Do you feel like that's what's done it for you here?
No. Hola, Felipe. Preguntan si es que, o sea, dicen que la consistencia gana torneos y preguntan si es que eso fue lo que te lleva a ganar finalmente.
Hola, buenas noches. Bueno, muchas gracias y sí, la verdad, mejor dicho, imposible. La consistencia fue lo que nos permitió ganar este campeonato, así que, bueno, súper feliz.
Well, he says, good night, everyone. Thanks for the congratulations. And yeah, he completely agrees with what Joey said there. Consistency was key to achieving this championship, so he's very, very happy about it.
Now, Felipe, you and Owen and Carl had a really intense battle going on there. Did you know that you had the championship wrapped up coming into this race, and did that free you up to fight pretty hard?
Me preguntan, dicen que tuviste una batalla bastante intensa con Owen, Watts y Modov, y sé que tenías eso en mente y sabías que ya tenías el campeonato ganado, lo que te permitió pelear de una manera un poco más dura con ellos.
Sí, bueno, desde que estaba atrás de ellos en la succión, sabía que me tenía que mantener ahí, no hacer una maniobra muy peligrosa, porque me podía costar el campeonato, no quería arriesgar de más. Pero bueno, aproveché el error que cometió Owen y pude avanzar al tercero, y bueno, después Modov se equivocó en los pits y también lo aproveché y llegué segundo.
Well, Felipe says that, yeah, he knew he had to be careful, particularly at the start, because he had to do 18 laps to make sure he got the championship. So he didn't want to risk it too much. But after those 18 laps, he knew he could get on attack mode. And happily for him, even though they fought very hard, he got advantage from the mistakes made by Owen and Carl, and got an easy second place in the end.
That's a good point. We hadn't thought about the fact that he did have to complete at least half the race. I like to ask this of almost all the champions. Felipe, do you intend to defend your crown next season?
Bueno, Felipe pregunta si es que vas a querer defender tu título en la próxima temporada.
Muy buena pregunta. La verdad, estoy viendo todavía, no es muy seguro si es que corro la próxima temporada, por el tema de la duración del campeonato, que dura mucho y se me complica un poco los tiempos de las fechas, pero si me dan los tiempos voy a hacer lo posible para poder estar en la próxima.
Well, he says it's a very good question. He's not sure yet. He's trying to see if he can do it, because he's clashing with other championships he's going to do. But if he can do it, he's definitely going to do it.
That's understandable. The lure of getting multiple championships always is a great one. Congratulations, and feel free to thank who you'd like for getting you this win and podium.
Bueno, muchas felicitaciones de nuevo y puedes saludar a quien quiera y agradecer a quien quiera.
Bueno, muchas gracias y agradecer al equipo, a .cl, a Horacio Galquín y a todos los chilenos que estuvieron apoyando durante todo el campeonato y a Pablo que me está traduciendo todo.
Oh, thanks, you guys and the whole .cl team and myself for translating in several rounds. Yeah, good night, guys.
Great stuff. That was Felipe Ruiz, our new champion, second place today, along with his translator, Paulo Munoz. Up next, we have our winner and first-time winner this season, Rafael Russo with DJ Clark.
Rafael, that looked like an absolutely incredible battle with Michael Ross. Talk me through that, man.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all the organizers of PRL and all the drivers for this amazing and fun season. All of you guys of GSRC for the amazing broadcast as well. About the race, it was really fun. First of all, I didn't expect to race today because it was my wife's birthday. But thanks to Brazilian local time, I will be able to race because it's too late now here. So I didn't have too much time to practice. Actually, I entered in the session in the beginning of the qualifying, but thanks to all my teammates that practice and race with me during the week in the iRacing officials. So I was really prepared to this race with the Corvette. And about the battle, first I have a battle with Aloy, right? With the Porsche that was way too fast in the straights. I believe he put no wings in the Porsche. Unfortunately, he committed a mistake, and then I got P2. And I think Michael took 2 slowdowns, and the second one after the pits. So I overtake him. And then was just trying to keep the pace, look at the mirror, avoid the draft. He had one opportunity that I could defend. And that's it. Michael was a really clean driver, so it was a nice and beautiful battle. And that's it, my first win at PRL. And I'm really happy. And I think that's it. Thank you to all again, and to my teammates, and looking forward for the next season.
Well, I know we are most certainly looking forward to it. And so I guess I have to ask you, looking forward to that next season, you going to stick with the Corvette? You going to change it up? What are you feeling?
That's a great question. I have no idea. We need to see what if iRacing will make some changes with the GT cars. We never know what could happen, but Corvette is a really nice car. He had some issues with, I don't know if the word's correct, the reacceleration. He's too slow in the first meters compared to Porsche and Ferrari, for example. But it's a really nice car. I really enjoy to drive the Corvette. But we need to see if there will be some changes with the GT cars. But I intend to race again with the Corvette as well. Yes.
Well, wonderful. Rafael, congratulations again on a well-deserved first win of the season. It was an absolute pleasure getting to watch that race from up here.
Thank you, Clark, and thank you all.
That was your winner in the GTE class, Rafael Russo. And now Joe Pica's caught up with our GTE champion, Stephen Ash.
Exactly. And it was probably a very nervous race for Stephen Ash, I imagine. We made a big deal in the lead up about where you needed to finish, what you needed to do at minimum to take this championship home. And in the very first lap, you find yourself off track. I mean, what is going through your mind in that instant?
Yeah, how's it going, guys? Was a pretty wild finale. Let's just say that. I knew, with Monza is the last race. It's all to play for. Anything can happen, and I think Monza showed why that's the case today. I think maybe I didn't really need to take that risk on lap 1, going around the outside there of Lesmo 1. Got squeezed a little bit, just an unfortunate incident. Got a little damage on the front as well, but fortunately wasn't too bad and didn't full spin or anything, so was able to get back on the track and not too bad of a position. But yeah, the balance of the car was a little bit off for the rest of the race, so it was definitely difficult to drive, but yeah, managed to do what I needed to do, and yeah, incredibly happy to take home the drivers and teams championship for Full Send Racing.
Did you have communications with your teammate during that race to try and play any sort of helping role to help you out, or extra pair of eyes to make sure that you can seal this up properly?
Yeah, we're always talking in Discord for these races. Just like you said, an extra set of eyes. Whoever's ahead, we just kind of tell each other if there's wrecks coming up and everything. And yeah, he helped me out today for sure. When I had that little incident on lap 1, he ended up getting ahead of me and was able to give me a little draft for the next 2 laps, then little teammate friendliness letting me by. And yeah, I got to thank Mac for the entire season. He was a pretty epic teammate for the season, super consistent, and one of the major reasons why we were able to take home the team championship.
Yeah, we kind of wondered if that was intentional, just making sure that you had that one more position. Knowing that, though, 4 wins on the season, pretty impressive. Can you come back and can you maybe one-up it and get at least half of the races under wins?
Yeah, I actually think I'm going to take the next season off and focus on iRacing officials a bit more, but this is my 2nd season in PRL now, and I think I'll definitely be back sometime in the future. It's a fantastic league, really well run, and yeah, I'll definitely be tuning in next season to watch some of the races, and hopefully it's another great season again. I mean, this season was, honestly, like nothing short of epic. It was neck and neck between myself, Michael Ross, and Uthman Alawi the entire way, and yeah, had a lot of fun, and like I said, great league. So
well, great stuff, Stephen. Congratulations, and feel free to thank whoever made this championship possible.
Yeah, of course. I just want to thank all the guys at Full Send Racing, guys who were hyping me up tonight: Joachim, Big Man Bobber, Carter, Tristan, and of course my teammate Mac Miller. Yeah, fantastic group of guys, and also you guys here at GSRC do a great job with the production. So yeah, thanks to everyone.
Well, thank you very much. That was Stephen Ash. Might have a situation where we have both champions missing next season. We'll keep an eye on that, and that'll certainly be a story, I'm sure, if those are both open to anybody come next season. Meanwhile, we, of course, want to thank the sponsors for this series, starting with Simulation Motorsports Affinity. If you want to check them out, look at SIMMSA.net, and they can help get you introduced to the world of sim racing. And, of course, longtime sponsor NinjaTrader. Their website is simply at NinjaTrader.com. And then for your sim rig needs, butt kicker products are the way to go. They are at thebuttkicker.com. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcasts that you see listed here on your screen. And additional thanks to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen, proud to get hold of more of her great work, including an upcoming new album here soon. Thanks to the team today, DJ, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Also, check out our social media, which includes Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. If you'd like to support us, check out our merchandise store at simply gsrc.storenv.com. And we keep a link in the description below. Next race for this series is coming on Tuesday, March 23rd at 9 p.m. Eastern. So you get a little bit of a break, but definitely come back for more because this is always exciting here on Tuesday nights. We have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar, including in just about an hour's time, Turn 2.0 Flying Huskies goes to Long Beach. That'll be at 11:30 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.